June 28th, 2025. It was a day unlike any other in the long, storied life of Reverend Jimmy Swaggart. For decades, he had stood before millions on television, in churches, on crusade stages, his voice a clarion call to faith, repentance, and redemption. But on this day, the world saw him not in the pulpit, not at the piano, but quietly seated in a hospital bed. There were no crowds, no choir, no thunderous applause. Just Jimmy, his eyes meeting the camera one final time.
He didn't speak.
He didn't preach. But somehow, in that silence, he said everything. 3 days later, on July 1st, 2025, Jimmy Swaggart passed away at the age of 90. The official cause was cardiac arrest, but for millions of believers and admirers around the world, it felt like the end of an era. This wasn't just the passing of a man. It was the closing of a chapter in the story of modern Christianity. Jimmy Swaggart was more than a preacher. He was the face of Christian television for generations. His ministry reached across continents, his gospel albums sold in the millions, and his voice, sometimes controversial, always passionate, shaped the spiritual journeys of countless souls. His journey was not without controversy. There were scandals, there were setbacks, and there were moments when the world doubted he could ever return. But Jimmy Swaggart's story was also one of redemption. He found his way back to the pulpit, back to the music, back to the message that had always driven him, the unending grace of God. And so, that final video, though it was never labeled a goodbye, felt like one. Maybe Jimmy knew. Maybe, deep down, we all did. Today, we remember not just the controversies, but the countless lives touched by his ministry. We remember the music, the sermons, the moments of hope and healing. We remember the man who, even in silence, found a way to say goodbye. On June 28th, 2025, the world witnessed a moment unlike any other in the life of Reverend Jimmy Swaggart. For over 7 decades, his voice had been a beacon for millions, a voice that carried the message of salvation, repentance, and hope into homes across the globe. But this time, there was no grand stage, no pulpit, no soaring sermon. Instead, Jimmy sat quietly in a hospital bed, his frail figure illuminated by the soft glow of the room. His eyes met the camera one last time. He said no words, offered no sermon, yet in that silence, a profound message was conveyed, one of finality, reflection, and peace. This silent farewell was unlike anything his followers had ever seen. The man known for his powerful preaching and passionate music was now vulnerable, human, and at rest. The image of Jimmy Swaggart in that hospital room became etched in the hearts of millions, a poignant reminder of mortality, legacy, and the inevitable passage of time. Just 3 days later, on July 1st, 2025, Jimmy Swaggart passed away at the age of 90. The cause was cardiac arrest, but for those who had followed his ministry, it felt like more than the loss of a man. It was the closing of an era, the end of a chapter that had shaped modern Christian broadcasting and evangelism. Jimmy Swaggart was not just a preacher, he was a pioneer. At a time when Christian television was still in its infancy, he built a ministry that reached millions worldwide. His broadcasts were a staple in countless households, his gospel albums sold in the millions, and his message of grace and redemption resonated deeply with people from all walks of life. His journey, however, was not without its trials. The controversies that marked his career tested his resolve and faith. Scandals threatened to dismantle the ministry he had built, and many doubted whether he would ever return to the pulpit. Yet time and again, Jimmy Swaggart demonstrated resilience. He embraced redemption, returned to preaching, and continued to share the gospel with unwavering dedication. That final video, though never explicitly called a goodbye, carried the weight of farewell. Perhaps Jimmy knew his time was near. Perhaps his followers sensed it too. In that quiet moment, the preacher who had once filled arenas with his voice left an indelible mark, not through words, but through the power of presence. As the news of his passing spread, tributes poured in from around the world. Churches held special services, prayer groups gathered, and millions shared memories of how Jimmy Swaggart's voice had touched their lives. For many, he was more than a televangelist. He was a spiritual guide, a source of comfort, and a symbol of enduring faith. His legacy is complex and multifaceted. It includes the music that lifted spirits, the sermons that challenged hearts, and the ministry that broke barriers. It also includes the human struggles that remind us all of the fragility of life and the power of grace. In remembering Jimmy Swaggart, we honor a man who dedicated his life to a calling greater than himself. His final silent goodbye invites us to reflect on our own journeys, our faith, and the legacies we leave behind. As we continue to explore his last days, his final messages, and the impact he made, we invite you to share your memories. What did Jimmy Swaggart's voice mean to you? How did his ministry shape your faith? This is how legacies live on, through stories, through hearts touched, and through the enduring power of faith. Jimmy Swaggart's final speech, though silent, spoke volumes about the man behind the ministry. Those closest to him recall the quiet strength he carried even in his last moments. Family members describe a man who, despite physical frailty, remained spiritually vibrant, deeply rooted in faith and hope. His son, Donnie Swaggart, shared that Jimmy's final days were filled with prayer and reflection. He spoke often about grace, not just as a theological concept, but as a lived experience. Jimmy wanted his legacy to be one of forgiveness, redemption, and unwavering faith in God's mercy. Friends and colleagues remember his humility. After decades in the spotlight, Jimmy's last public appearance was stripped of grandeur. There was no sermon, no call to action, just a man at peace, saying goodbye without words. This quiet farewell resonated deeply with those who had followed his journey through triumphs and trials. The impact of Jimmy Swaggart's ministry cannot be overstated. He was a pioneer in televangelism, bringing the gospel into millions of homes when the medium was still new and untested. His music, sermons, and broadcasts inspired countless individuals to seek faith and hope. Even as controversies challenged his path, his message of grace endured. Many found in his story a testament to the power of forgiveness and the possibility of new beginnings. His ministry's reach extended beyond television screens. It touched hearts and transformed lives. In the wake of his passing, the ministry continues under the leadership of his son and family. They carry forward the mission, honoring Jimmy's vision while adapting to a changing world. The Family Worship Center and Sun Life Broadcasting Network remain vibrant hubs of faith, music, and outreach. Jimmy Swaggart's final silent goodbye invites us to reflect on the nature of legacy. It reminds us that sometimes the most powerful messages are conveyed not in words, but in presence, in faith, and in the lives we touch. As we remember Jimmy Swaggart, we honor a life dedicated to spreading hope, healing, and the message of God's unending grace. His voice may be silent now, but his influence echoes on, in the hearts of millions and in the ongoing work of the ministry he built. Jimmy Swaggart's final moments were marked by quiet strength and deep faith. Though he spoke no words in his last public appearance, his presence conveyed a powerful farewell. His legacy, a ministry built on grace, redemption, and unwavering belief, continues through his family and the millions he inspired. Though his voice is now silent, the impact of his life and message lives on.